So it's very late. It's way past my bedtime.
You're not going to make the early bird special at this rate.
You're right. So I'm old, and he's
I'm bald.
bald. Yeah. This is our weekly. I don't know. We call it a podcast, a vlog, a rant. Is probably more what it is. That's why it's called Banter.
Ramblings of lunatics, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, I'll be the lunatic. You're trained to handle lunatics, so I suppose I can take the lunatic. I look like a lunatic, I suppose. Most people would probably.
That's true. I'll give you that.
So we would call this episode probably 1.5 because episode 1 we had a terrible recording mishap, and among other things.
I assume that when this is like the biggest podcast in the world, then we can release the original first episode bad recording as like a nod to the original fans.
Deleted scenes.
Exactly. Yeah, it'll be like the director's cut.
Nobody has seen this before.
Never before seen footage.
All right, so this week we're going to eventually talk a little bit about idioms. So we got to talking this week about like all these strange idioms that we say on a daily basis, like the hay is in the barn.
Or shit rolls downhill.
That's a good one. And Jack has well, I want to say that for later. Raining cats and dogs. There's some interesting ones, and we've been doing some research, and you would be shocked at some of the stuff that you'll hear tonight. But we're going to start with my particular rant of the week. So last week, again, this is for only the fans that are big time fans that saw episode 1.
Well, Jack, tell you what, I'm going to start a timer for this, and just out of curiosity, I want to see how long this takes for us. So I will let you know how long it takes you to get your thoughts out by the end of it.
Oh, I can get this thing out in 60 seconds, but it'll probably go longer. So whenever you're ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so last week Jack did his on how people treat their dogs like they're human beings. And I kind of agree with him on that to an extent, but I love dogs. I love animals. I love being able to hang out with my dog in the backyard and have a beer and that kind of thing. That's great. I love that. But what I hate, what drives me absolutely insane, is when people don't pick up after their dogs or let their dogs just roam free wherever they want in the middle of town with little kids playing and the dogs get in their face and all kinds of like that stuff just absolutely drives me crazy. So this summer, June, July, I was going out on a run on our fine Wayne Edenall cross country course, which is just amazing. Get out there if you can. Side note. But we have signs all over the place that say, make sure you're keeping your dog on a leash and that you're picking up after your dog. I saw a man cross the street, stand directly in front of the sign that said, keep your dog on a leash, take his dog off the leash and let his dog roam free. And I about lost my mind. Like, what made me lose my mind probably the most was that a few hundred feet away is a large dog park where you can let your dogs off leash and let them run around. There was nobody in the dog park, so it could have been the man and just his dog. But instead, he let his dog just roam free in the wild. Okay, they're not wild animals anymore. They're domesticated pets. Okay, but unfortunately, a number of my particular student athletes that I help coach along these days have been bitten by dogs and chased by dogs down the street because people refuse to put the dogs on a leash. Drives me insane. The other thing that's probably just as bad, if not worse, is people will pick up their dog feces, put it into a bag, and then leave the bag in the location where the dog pooed. Makes no sense. Okay, I would rather you just leave it there, let them poop in the wild. That's okay, whatever. Let them do it. God knows I've done it. So, I mean, let the dog do his thing. Leave it there. It's nature. Don't leave the bag there. So people that do those things are way more on the spectrum. I get angry with those folks more than I get angry with the folks that treat their dogs like they're human beings. Other than, this is one thing I'll agree with Jack on. Other than the people that push their dogs around in baby strollers. That is asinine. I would never do that. I would never condone that activity. But I've seen it on many occasions. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is my rant of the week. And moving on.
Okay, moving on. Well, I'm glad we got that out there. Okay, we both got a chance to get that out there. So
what was the time?
That was 2:53.
Okay, a little longer than I thought it was going to go. But
you know what? I don't think it's long enough to lose anyone's attention span, so I think we're okay.
Perfect.
Well, so we did a little research on our own, and we looked up some idioms. We talked about a few, and then we started noticing that we were saying them to each other in regular conversation, and then we'd be like, that was one, look that up. So I think that I have a couple good ones that I want to talk about. I'm going to kick us off, and I will say that after hearing some of these, I don't think people are going to want to use these idioms ever again. Some of these are okay. So the first one, very common, the phrase is, pardon my French. So this is from like 17th century England, and like upper class rich English people who would be well educated would just use French in their normal everyday conversation, like throw in a French word here and there. And they would say, pardon my French, as a way of saying like, oh, you wouldn't understand what I'm saying. So it's really them like looking down their nose at like poor uneducated people who couldn't speak French. So now we just use it when we swear, pretty much. So it's a little different, but back in the day, it was like an upper class, like snotty thing, kind of.
Huh.
Yeah.
What? It's interesting. I hadn't known that. That's what this is about. Oh, okay. So I also did my own research, looked up a whole bunch of different ones. Another one that I saw that was pretty interesting was the raining cats and dogs. So people have said this I've heard this for a long time. This one's a little bit odd. So there were a couple of different like versions or origin stories behind it. One had to do with like Thor and his father Odin, and Odin was represented by dogs, and so the god of thunder and lightning and all that kind of stuff, and dogs, and so it had something to do with that. The other one that they said is probably most relevant was in England in I think it was in the 1700s sometime, early 1800s, late 1700s. The houses would be really, really small, and so then they would push the animals, so the dogs and the cats, to the rafters of the home, and then sometimes those dogs and cats would get out onto the roof, and then it would rain and it would get slippery, and they would literally, sorry, my lights go off.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. If I don't move around enough, my lights remind me I need to keep my blood flowing.
Yeah, but if you move around too much, then we can hear all your joints creaking, and it really messes up the audio.
Yeah. So much truth to that. Okay, so back to the cats and dogs. All right. So the cats and dogs would climb out of the roof, and then it would rain and it would get slippery, and literally the cats and dogs would slip off the roof, and it would rain cats and dogs. That's terrible. That's
kind of dark. Can you imagine looking out the window? There's just literally cats and dogs flying through the air.
I imagine little kids, like their pets are just flying.
Kind of traumatizing. So, yeah, I don't know if you noticed this doing your research, but most of these are like English origin idioms that come from like somewhere between like 1600 and 1800. That's what I thought most of these were.
So a lot of them that I saw they're actually English idioms. So the English, especially now. Okay, so I watched. Have you seen? Are you a soccer fan? Watch soccer, football? No. Bo is going to be really upset with you.
Don't watch the football.
I'm gonna have to bring this up with Bo. So there was a movie that came out a number of years ago. It had the same guy that played Jax Teller on what's that motorcycle show? No, I'm blanking. Sons of Anarchy. You ever seen Sons of Anarchy?
Did not watch Sons of Anarchy. This is not a Sons of Anarchy podcast, so that was not a requirement going in.
Regardless, the guy on the show is part of that. He's in that movie. So the movie is called Green Street Hooligans. And the basis of the movie is it's based in England, and it's this kid that gets sent over to England to, like, he got into trouble at Harvard or something. He gets bullied and all that stuff, and he gets sent over to England, and he joins like this soccer gang. And I don't know, it's all about the fights that happen during soccer matches and stuff like that. And it's full on brawls and all kinds of stuff. But they speak in a lot of those areas, they speak in idioms. So like they would say like, like you're in Barney, and they're like, what are you talking about? You're in Barney. And be like, you're in trouble. Barney Rubble, trouble. You're in trouble. You're in Barney. So like they would said a lot of their phrases, they speak in idioms. And so it's really hard to catch up. So that's why a lot of these, so this is like the basis of idioms, a lot of them. If you look at the dictionary that we found or whatever, the Encyclopedia of Idioms, you can see some of that in there. It says English idioms is usually how it's built off of. But yeah, most of them are that, but some of them
are
further back.
Some of them, so there's a lot also that are origin unknown, but first usage, and they'll quote a book from the 1500s or whatever, but they're seems like it's from, could be 1,000 years before that or something like that.
Yeah, there's some that are Shakespearean, it was used in Shakespearean plays and stuff. So this one I just saw, was it to bite head off? When you don't bite my head off.
Yeah.
So this says, so I'll just read it. This phrase seems to have been replaced by a much earlier idiom dating back to the 1500s, bite someone's nose off, meaning to answer brusquely or in a snappy fashion. In the current form, it has been used since the 18th century. To bite someone's nose off. So
that one's still we still don't know the origin necessarily. That's not very.
It's hard because they change.
Right. So I'm assuming. Well, I'll just give you one, and this one is not. It's it seems obvious when you read it, but the phrase is to fight tooth and nail. Oh, so, yeah. To fight tooth and nail refers to an animal fighting, because animals can't use weapons the way people do. So you'd say, I'm fighting tooth and nail, meaning you're using every weapon available to you to fight, which I think is interesting.
That is.
And kind of dark. I haven't gotten into my favorites yet, but I have one that will segue you into one of your favorites.
Well, okay, what did I just see? In the loop. So if you're in the loop on something. It says this comes from military terminology, when officers in command needing to pass on orders to the soldiers, keeping lines of communication open and regularly updated in feedback loop. So all personnel are informed. So you're in that feedback loop. So that one's pretty basic, but even the most basic ones that we've seen, you don't realize there's an actual kind of origin to it that, that one's military based. Makes sense.
So I'll give you this one, and then it'll segue you. I think you know which one will segue to based on what it is. So using the term hot dog as an exclamation, when you say hot dog, it's a reference to when people used to eat a piece of meat or a sausage of some kind, and they would find out that it was actually part dog in that sausage. So they would exclaim hot dog as what the heck. So that's why now people will say hot dog.
So that's why So that's why they're called hot dogs instead of like pork thing, right? It's
Right.
hot pork sausage.
Then people will also and then it took on its own meaning outside of the actual sausage
Yeah.
thing. So
Wow. That
yeah,
was
pretty
wow.
gross. And I did not expect that one. I thought it was just going to be like some like snappy like 1920s. Like that's what I pictured, just like some like 1920s guy, like newsy guy going like hot dog. It's not that friendly.
Wow. Okay. So we talked about this one a few days ago. So to layer on that one, the term chow down comes from what was it, World War II era, when the soldiers, when they would eat, when they were in and around Japan, they would say it was chow time, to chow down. And chow is a Chinese dog, or yeah, it's a Chinese dog. So actually, my dog that I have that you've watched, which I don't know if I should let you watch my dogs if you don't like dogs very much to begin with, but
Once again, I don't mind the dogs. It's the people.
so you don't like me.
You don't treat your dog like that. Treat your dog like a dog, not a person.
Ah, okay. Moving on. So the dogs, the breed of dog is a chow, and at the time, Chinese and the Japanese were known to eat dogs. So put dogs in their food, dog meat in their food. And so it was sort of a making fun of that culture to say we're going to chow down. We're going to, that. So it's sort of the same layer. You almost wonder if the two at one point were kind of the same thing, or if I don't know, that's, man, to chow down and hot dog. Now I don't want to chow down on hot dogs.
I don't know why, but chow down to me, now that I know that, like the chow down origin sounds worse to me.
Because it's an actual Chinese dog.
I think it's because it's racially charged. I think that's why it seems worse to me.
All right. Yeah, I think so. I don't disagree with you. I would agree with you. So moving to that next one, now you got me on the next one that we looked into, which still related to food, but also racially charged, which is interesting that we don't know these things. You just use these phrases like hot dog or chow down. Or the next one that most people don't realize is the oh man, now I lost it.
It's a piece of cake.
It's a piece of cake.
So like someone says like that was a piece of cake in terms of like that was really easy.
Yeah. So turns out, back in slavery times, the slave owners or several plantation owners would have a party together, and they would have the slaves entertain the owners and their guests by acting as them. So they would pretend that they were the owners. And so that was the only time that they could actually do that without being punished for doing it, or at least they didn't mention within this particular story that they would be punished. Who knows? And the best job at showing that they were acting like the owner, or they got the biggest laughs or whatever it was, they got a piece of cake for that. And so, like, I don't know, man.
And then the way the phrase comes to be from that is that slaves would then use that phrase because it was so easy for them to make fun of the slave owners that they were basically just getting a free piece of cake if they decided to do this, or well, if they were forced to do this, obviously, but like, so they were like, oh, okay, free piece of cake. Basically, anytime they were told to do this like competition thing.
Which it's easy for them to make fun of their slave owners.
That was one of the most shocking ones that I read. I was like, and we just throw this phrase around.
Right.
No one knows this.
Well, like I said, like these last three that we've done, we just throw them out there. We have it's just sound, like, oh, piece of cake. Like I literally I said it was like 3 days ago. I said it to our workout that we had for the team. I was like, oh, it's a piece of cake. You guys got this. And now I'm like, gosh, should I be saying piece of cake or not? Like, it's interesting. Or at least I have some background knowledge behind that, and I think there's a lot more like that. That you're just like, you look through these idioms and you wonder, well, where did that come from? And then you start to actually look into it a little bit more. And I think that's the hard part, though. There's some of them like that it's pretty convincing, but it's hard to nail down a lot of the other ones and exactly where they came from, like you were saying.
Right.
One of them said, maybe the 1500s. Oh, wait, it was the 1700s.
That one is dead on. Like, it was this exact thing.
Yeah.
Know it for sure. Which is very unusual for all of the ones that we've been looking at. But yeah, that makes me think, obviously people don't use that phrase with any bad intentions or anything today. But
that's part of that.
But then when you think, like, we know where the origin of that is, like, should we be saying that? Should we think about, like, using a phrase like that? I don't know.
Interesting. Ooh, what's this one?
I've got one that's, so this one is pretty obscure, but and people don't really use this phrase anymore, but this was a popular phrase, like, I believe around like World War II, people would use the term brass monkeys to say it's cold. Like, it's brass monkeys outside, meaning it's cold. So
it's a Beastie Boys song.
It is a Beastie Boys song, but I personally don't hear people describe the weather as brass monkeys these days. But the reason that they ever used brass monkeys is because on ships, like warships, they would carry cannonballs in big piles, right? And the cannonballs were like, rolling around, and they would be put on a tray, which was called a monkey. And when it would get really cold outside, the brass that made up the monkey would contract and the cannonballs would fall. So you would know that it was brass monkeys outside if the cannonball started to fall. If it was cold enough for the brass monkeys not to hold the cannonballs anymore, it was cold.
Wow, that's pretty intricate one.
And for that was I've like obviously never heard of that in any way, shape, or form before. But that one might be my favorite one. I like that one a lot.
That one is pretty good.
So we might have to bring back that phrase. I know you're the old one, so you'll probably have to introduce it. Then it'll sound a little more natural, probably.
Yeah, with my age, I should use all the old phrase.
Yeah, like if someone hears you say brass monkeys, they'll be like, yeah, it makes sense you would say that.
I wonder, this one's interesting. Okay, so this one's another, they threw me under the bus. You get into trouble. So there's a lot of different ways, but they say like the oldest printed record of the phrase was in 1982. So it's not that, this is one that's pretty recent. As an idiomatic expression published by an English newspaper known as the Times in British politics. The conservative benches listened to her in silence. She was in deep trouble, and the lobbies hummed with the prospect of her departure. President Galtieri had pushed her under the bus, which had the gossips that she had said that only the means of her removal. So they just like literally made up an idiom that had no. So that's one where there's like not like a. It's not. It didn't mean there wasn't like a meaning behind it. It was like literally we just threw you under a bus. Like we want you to get hit by something. So it wasn't even like a. It didn't. There wasn't a hidden meaning behind it, like a lot of these other idioms that we see come from. It was like just literally they threw it. It started as we currently use it, which is that one's really interesting to me because of that fact that it didn't have there wasn't something else that pushed around it like the brass monkeys one. It went on a different route. So that's,
I find that one very weird that it's only from 1982.
From 82, I know, because it sounds like it could have been used so much earlier than that.
Yeah, like it should feel like it should, like, how did no one come up with that earlier almost?
I don't know.
That's a $1 trillion idea that someone let slip all the way until 1982.
Oh, speaking of $1 trillion idea, I had $1 million idea one time. I've had a couple of $1 million ideas.
Ooh,
So
this is the kind of digression I can get behind.
All right, so I'll tell you one of them. And hopefully one of my buddies watches this, because he was going to invest in me, and I was like, no, I'm too busy. You know, I got coaching and recruiting. I don't have time to do this. So this, and I don't know how well this will work out with the coaching career to do this one, but I'd come up with the idea. This was like in 2010, to have a self-serve liquor bar. So, you know, like if you go to the yogurt places, the froyo places where you can go and you can pick your own yogurt and put your own toppings on it, like you actually do the whole thing yourself, and then you weigh it and you pay for it. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Same concept, but with mixed drinks. So you would bring up you'd get your own card, like your membership card or whatever. So
like a library card.
Like a library card, of course. For alcoholics, you know.
It's a library card for alcoholics. It's like they say on Arthur, having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. It's the same.
Exactly. Yes, you get what so you take that and you go, and so it limits you in the number of drinks that you can have. So that's where your fail safe is in terms of caution, you know, getting people in trouble, that kind of thing. And so you wouldn't have any bartenders, but you'd have people that would walk around as bouncers just to make sure people are, you know, being appropriate, whatnot, and not getting too hammered drunk. So you'd put the card into the particular machine. So like if it's vodka or rum or, you know, whatever it happens to be that you want to have, and then you'd have the station for the different vodkas, and then you'd have the station for the mixers, and you can mix your own. There would be suggested drink options. So you would have people could punch in their drink or whatever, and then they could write on the wall, or they could use an iPad and it would just come up on the screen, and it would be like the top 10 drinks of the week. You'd be like, oh, I want to try that. I want to mix that and have that drink. And so it would, I just thought it would be really cool. So I'm going to tell you, 3 years later, this is when I was living in Colorado. I drove through Cherry Creek area of Denver, and one existed.
Like the exact thing, or was it different?
It was a little bit different, but it was the same concept. You could go and actually, so there's actually breweries that do it now too. Now it exists at breweries where they have like 10 taps, and you can get up to 5 beers, and you go up and you put your card down, and then and it'll allow you to get your 16 ounces or whatever. And then you go and have your drink, and you come back and find another tap, and you do it for 16 ounces, and you get 5 of them, and you can, I was like, somebody stole my $1 million idea.
So what's proprietary about your idea would be if you had the software to like track the top like drink recipes of the week that users put in themselves. So that could be the proprietary part. But at the same time, my question is, I get the liquor part of it, but then is it the same thing with the ingredients? Like, is it come out of a machine, or is there like a table?
It would come out of a machine. It's like a Coke machine. You know those new-ish Coke machines?
Like the Coke Freestyle thing.
Yeah, it's the same.
So it's got like cranberry juice and like you know, club soda and all that.
Yeah, it'd be the exact same concept. And so you could put, I want an ounce of triple sec and an ounce of orange juice and an ounce of vodka, and that's my drink, right? And it would. So now I hadn't quite figured out the stuff like how do you get a slice of lime and all that kind of stuff, but I'm sure that there's an easy concept behind that. But the drink itself, you'd have the kiosk that has the vodkas, and then you have the kiosk that has the rums. You might have, you know, like, and they'd be spaced out kind of throughout the room. And so you could be like, oh, I'm going to go over here and get this. I'm going to mix it with the mixed drink over here and whatever. But again, I think the hardest part that I struggled with with this was going off and trying to like, how do I limit the alcohol intake? Like, so somebody's not getting like 8 ounces of vodka and that, like, I'm good. I'm just gonna have 8 ounces of vodka and 8 ounces of rum and mix them together and drink it. You know, like.
Well, I didn't know you were trying to make a cool self-serve bar for nerds.
I was thinking of the American way of being able to do your own thing, be free.
Isn't the American way?
Not being held down by the man, you know, the bartender behind the bar that tells you what you should.
Isn't the American way being able to get 8 ounces of vodka in your drink?
Not wrong, folks.
So I will say that sounds like a bit of a pipe dream, if you're wondering where that came from.
Where did that come from? I would guess surfing, but that's my guess.
Excellent question, Old. I will answer that for you. It's not a surfing one. Good guess. I'm going to give you another guess because I think this is one that you might be able to get if you really thought about it.
It's a pipe dream. Probably it's something to do with like smoking a pipe.
Exactly. Oh. It's smoking an opium pipe and the dreams you would have after smoking off of an opium pipe, which would be these like fantastical, wonderful,
like Alice in Wonderland, like the caterpillar.
That caterpillar, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So that was a good one.
Interesting. That is.
And I will say that I think the reason that these started coming up is we were talking about like generational stuff, right? Like the phrase sounds like a broken record. Mm-hmm. Like people are eventually going to have no idea where that came from. Like in 100 years, people are like, they're just still going to say it, I'm sure, but no one's going to have any semblance of like what the origin is. So you're talking about this generational stuff. And now I'm seeing like, you know, maybe 100 years ago, everyone who said pipe dream knew exactly where it came from.
Yeah, because nobody smokes pipe anymore. Like you don't see that.
But it would be cool, kind of, though. People did. I think it should come back in vogue.
Oh, here's my other side story. All right, so I love this. This is why this is called Banter, because we digress. So when I was in high school, small little town in Iowa, Buddy and I were driving home late one night on a weekend. We saw an old man in his boxer shorts mowing his lawn, smoking a pipe in his, like a tight white t-shirt. He's probably in his like late 70s. And it had to have been 11 o'clock at night, 11:30 at night. He's mowing his lawn. And he had the big old pipe out. And I don't know, when you said pipe and pipe dream, I was like, oh my gosh, I just had a visual of this old man mowing.
Like a long Gandalf pipe?
No, well, it wasn't like a long one, but it was still pretty, it wasn't just like a little short, but it was way down to here. So it was just hanging out the side of his mouth as he's mowing his lawn in his boxers.
Okay. So more like, there you go. Get those motion lights going. So more like a national treasure. Nicolas Cage finds a pipe that leads to a key. Kind of pipe.
Yeah, like that. Pretty accurate. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's exactly what I'm imagining.
I'm trying to rehydrate. We need to get sponsors. Then I can be like, brought to you by, and drink my water.
Brought to you by water.
Sustaining life.
Just water.
Clean, clear water.
That's like when Drew Brees did that thing where he was just like, or like there are a couple people who did like brought to you by chocolate milk or whatever. And I was like, is this a company? It's not. They were just talking about chocolate milk on TV. And I was just like, weird. Like, did all the chocolate milk, like, I don't know what to call them, tycoons perhaps? Did all the chocolate milk tycoons of the world get together at a summit and say, let's work together and let's sell more chocolate milk?
Well, okay. So there was a research study done 15, 20 years ago on different recovery drinks for exercise. So like, I don't remember I don't remember the whole specifics of the article, but so they tested like water, Gatorade, Powerade, milk, pickle juice, like all these things, pre, during, and post workout. And they found that chocolate milk was actually a really good source of vitamins and minerals and proteins and calcium and all that kind of stuff post exercise. And so then the article came out, and then all the companies that made that, the milk were all like, ooh, we can capitalize on this. And so then they started promoting it to athletes. And so, gosh, I don't know, it had to have been 15, 20 years ago when that study came out. I think it was when I was in grad school, so it had to have been close to, gosh, so yeah, 15 years ago. But
jeez.
Yeah. Because I remember reading it, and we had just started doing, like, we started giving chocolate milk and stuff, and then they started doing the commercials with athletes drinking chocolate milk, and then it just like kind of blew. And then you started seeing like Gatorade make their own protein shake chocolate milk drink things, and saying how good it was for everybody. And then they instead of paying your $1 for a thing of chocolate milk, you'd pay $5 for a Gatorade chocolate milk, which is basically the same thing. But
so I'm still confused on this concept, because I get who it's for. I get who the commercial is for. They're targeting athletes to sell more chocolate milk. But who made the ad? Because it's not for a company.
Well, I think it was like the chocolate milk. I don't know. Maybe it was Chocolate Milk Consortium. I don't know. Is that a thing?
No. Well, I don't know, actually. But I
think the Dairy Farmers of America or whatever. I think that's what it was. I think it was like the Dairy Farmers of America. That's a thing.
I feel like it is, I guess, but
we should know that living in Wisconsin.
That's true, but we're both kind of new here.
I'm from Iowa.
I'm from Chicago.
Well, I said Illinois, but Chicago and Illinois are not the same thing. And you're not from Chicago. You're from Downers Grove. That's not Chicago. So,
I listen to Chicago radio stations, so it's really like,
I can listen to Chicago radio stations in Kenosha. It doesn't mean I'm from Chicago.
Yeah, but if you drive to the wrong side of town, then it gets kind of staticky.
Jack, okay, I'm not that old. You can turn on, I can turn on XM radio on my computer right now and listen to a station in Belgium if I wanted to. I had to say
right,
Belgium.
But my car is from 2003, and I can turn on the radio and listen to music from Chicago perfectly clearly when I'm in Downers Grove.
Your car is from 2003?
Yeah. Just like Mario Kart Double Dash.
The century.
And, yeah, well, I mean, look, we're appealing to a national audience here. So in the realm of space, I'm from Chicago. If I met someone from Australia and they said, "Where are you from?" the answer is Chicago.
Well, okay. I don't disagree with that. So when I lived in Denver, I never lived in Denver. I lived in Littleton, Colorado, but I would say, "Where are you from?" Denver area. I would say Denver area. But most people have heard of Littleton for unfortunate reasons many years ago. People know where Littleton, Colorado is. But yeah, that's, speaking of which, so another sidebar. Do you know the guys who created South Park went to Littleton High School?
That I did not know.
Went to Columbine High School, sorry. And that the show is based off of like the South Park area in Colorado. So if you go down the highway,
I know it's a real town.
So it's the South Park Valley, and the pass that you go over to get there, fun fact, Kenosha Pass.
Oh.
It was one of my favorite places to run when I lived out there.
Well, la-di-da.
See how things come together?
There's some cosmic plan going on.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, we got any good ones? You got any other good ones? There's so many.
How about this? We're over a half hour here. So why don't we each close off with one more that you enjoyed, and and then we'll call it a show.
Okay. Do you want to go first? You got it? Or do you want me to go?
I can go.
Yeah.
How about this? A penny for your thoughts. I know I had teased this one earlier to you, but I did not explain it.
Penny for your thoughts. Okay. Go ahead.
Penny for your thoughts comes from an old belief. There's a year in here somewhere. 1547 was the first time it was seen in print, so it's old. And basically, it describes a wise man who has fallen silent in order to garner his wisdom. So he is intentionally quiet, I'm assuming, pondering the problems of the universe. And he then becomes poor because that's all he does. So someone would offer a penny for your thoughts to a wise man who has fallen silent because they were all poor because of it.
Wow, that's deep. I wasn't going to go that deep. You got me on that one. That's very philosophically deep, my friend.
Yeah, powerful.
Now I'm just going to be quiet. Okay, that's enough. Mine, since my name is old, is bucket list. It's believed that the origin of the term bucket list is closely related to the idiom kick the bucket. And the meaning of kick the bucket is to die. And along with the list, it means that the list of things in which the person is willing to do before he dies.
Do you know kick the bucket, where that comes from?
But I don't know kick the bucket. So
I do.
I'm going to click on the button, but I'm going to let you tell me. I'll read it later.
It's dark.
Okay.
Kick the bucket refers to someone with a noose around their head, around their neck, and they kick the bucket that they're standing on out from under them.
So
they die.
So now I remember reading it. They said in the original version of that, it was actually animals that they would kill that way. They would hang the animals. So it said a bucket or a beam was used to hang animals by their feet for slaughter. They would kick it while dying. So they would kick the bucket.
So there's two possible versions.
There's two different. So it actually says there's third theory. Third theory refers to the Catholic practice of placing the holy water bucket at the feet of a person who has died, so that visitors could sprinkle the holy water on the body. So there's three versions and during different times in history of kick the bucket. Mm-hmm. So that one's two terms, bucket list and kick the bucket, that kind of layer from each other. It's kind of interesting.
Well, we finished on a pretty complex and dark one, so I like that.
Wow, we did. So yours was complex. That was good. Yours was, so if you tie the two together, maybe the wise man is thinking about his bucket list, or maybe he's thinking about death, life, all of that, and then it leads
to... I have a lot of thoughts on this, so we'll be careful, but I just finished watching The Good Place, and whether you like the show or not, it's got an interesting take on what it thinks the afterlife is, and that's its own thing.
I've seen a little bit of it. My wife has. She's seen a bunch of episodes of it. But so 2 years ago, when my daughter was 3, one day, randomly, she was talking about God and like where you go when you die. This is a 3-year-old. And so, well, where do you think you go? She says, well, what happens is you die, you go up to heaven, and then God sends you back as a child. And we're like, where did you hear that? You're 3 years old. Where did you figure out about reincarnation? And she's like, oh, God told me. I was like, who is this child? So this is my now 5-year-old who's in kindergarten. Had picture day today, by the way. I don't know if I showed you the picture of her.
You did.
Very cute.
The fun facts and stuff on it. Very cute.
Did. Yeah, she was very wise for a 3-year-old at the time. Knew about reincarnation.
And she possibly spoke to divine entities also.
Possibly.
You can't say that she definitely didn't. There's no way to say that.
It's true. It's true. I should ask her now. We haven't talked about that in a couple of years. I should ask her now what she's a wise child. She gets that from her mother.
You're just like, hey, did you have a good day at school? Any new thoughts on the afterlife? Has God talked to you recently?
That's usually how our conversations go.
It's the natural progression of any father-daughter conversation, I'm sure.
Of course. Well, I think it's a good show. Yeah.
Well, I might be slightly biased, but hot dog.
Oh, just can't.
And there goes the show.
Piece of cake. So I think for next week, I think we can get this posted on our YouTube page. Jack has created one, just banter, old and bald. We'd love to be able to get a topic from somebody else. So hopefully we'll get 1 or 2 people that will watch the show, post some comments, and give us an idea for something we can talk about. And I will tell you, Jack and I can talk about just about anything. So the more obscure the topic, the better for us. And we'll start coming up with different topics, and maybe we'll have a guest on. Who knows? We'll see.
Anyone could be a guest. It's going to be exciting. I don't know who it's going to be. Neither of us know who it's going to be, and it doesn't matter what the topic is going to be.
Yeah,
so
anything. It'll be fun. So thank you for joining with us, everybody. Hope you like the show. Banter. Old.
And bald.